At the beginning of The Occupant, the story introduces us to two sisters. The elder one is named Abby, while the younger one is Beth. Their mother had recently passed away, leaving Abby to care for Beth, though their father, Archie, was still alive. So the two daughters were living with him at that time. As days go by, Beth's health begins to worsen since she is battling cancer. Though she had been struggling with it earlier, the illness now advances rapidly, reaching its final stage, which means Beth could pass away at any moment. To get her treated, she is admitted to the hospital, where the doctor informs Abby that while they will make every possible effort to save Beth's life, there is no assurance that she can be completely cured. Abby, determined to give her younger sister the best possible chance, feels that Beth must be admitted to a well-equipped hospital where top specialists can handle her case, but such treatment would require a large amount of money. For this reason, Abby tells her father that she intends to take up a high-paying job. Archie, however, refuses her request, warning that the job carries too much risk and insisting that he cannot bear the thought of losing both of his daughters. Yet Abby, unwilling to watch her sister fade away helplessly, insists that she will do whatever it takes to save Beth, and because of this determination, she eventually accepts a dangerous, high-paying assignment in a uranium mining project. Following this decision, Abby travels to the mountains of North Georgia, close to the Russian border where the mining operation is located. Once there, she begins her work on the uranium mine alongside a colleague, and together they carry out their duties in the mountainous terrain. During their work, Abby notices the dense forest on the far side of the mountain, and, struck by curiosity, she suggests to her coworker that they should explore in that direction. Her colleague immediately objects, cautioning her that beyond that point lies Russian territory and warning that if they trespass, the Russian guards would shoot them on sight. He firmly advises that if they wish to stay alive, they must remain within the designated area and limit their uranium search there. On that day, Abby stays put, but as time passes, her curiosity grows stronger. Eventually, one day, she ignores her colleague's warning and ventures alone toward the forest, crossing into the area that leads toward Russia. Armed with her gun, she advances into the eerily silent woods, sensing an unusual atmosphere all around her. The forest appears deserted, filled with stillness and emptiness in every direction. As she moves deeper, Abby comes across a peculiar-looking stone lying on the ground. Picking it up, she examines it closely, realizing she has never encountered anything like it before, as it was highly unusual to discover such an extraordinary stone in this particular region. After this discovery, Abby carries the unusual stone back to the base and begins conducting extensive research on it, trying to uncover its nature. The object seems almost alive, unlike anything she had ever seen before, and clearly no one else had ever encountered such a peculiar stone either. Despite its strange qualities, Abby chooses not to file any report about it, nor does she share her findings with anyone, keeping the black stone with her at all times while continuing her regular duties. During this period, she receives a phone call from her father, Archie, who informs her that he is planning to bring Beth home from the hospital. He explains that at least Beth could spend her final days in comfort within her own home. However, Abby refuses to accept this decision, as she desperately wants her younger sister to continue fighting for her life. Immediately, she rushes to her colleague Sergei and explains to him that it is crucial for her to return home right away, pleading with him to take her there. Unfortunately, Sergei cannot personally escort her, but he tells Abby that a helicopter nearby is available and waiting to depart. He then accompanies her to the site where the helicopter is stationed. Abby boards it, still carrying the mysterious black stone with her. Once the aircraft takes off, it begins flying her toward home, soaring over the icy mountain range. Looking down from above, Abby marvels at the breathtaking view beneath her, which fills her with a sense of awe. In the middle of their journey, however, the pilot warns her that they are approaching Russian airspace, and if they cross into that region, Russian forces would immediately target and shoot down their helicopter. As they move forward through thick patches of fog, Abby suddenly notices a flock of birds outside. These birds strongly resemble starlings, yet she finds it strange since such birds are usually seen flying closer to the ground, not at such a high altitude. The flock gradually draws nearer, and before long, they begin ramming into the helicopter. Their constant collisions create serious complications, and the pilot struggles desperately to maintain control of the aircraft. Despite his efforts, the situation rapidly deteriorates, and soon the helicopter is on the verge of crashing. Finally, even after the pilot's strenuous attempts to stabilize it, the helicopter plummets and crashes into the ground. Abby, though shaken, survives the accident with only minor injuries, but when she looks around, she discovers that one of the pilots died instantly in the crash, while the other is gravely wounded. Barely able to speak, the injured pilot gestures to Abby, urging her to quickly call for help using the radio nearby. She attempts several times to send out a distress call, but none of the radios function properly, leaving her stranded without communication. To make matters worse, the crash site lies in a remote and isolated region, far from any chance of immediate rescue. Abby is left bewildered and frightened, still unable to comprehend why a flock of birds would suddenly attack their helicopter in such a bizarre and unnatural way. After the crash, Abby lights a fire near the wrecked helicopter, hoping that the smoke will catch someone's attention and bring her rescue. But stranded 60 kilometers away from the nearest town in the middle of endless snowy mountains, she knows deep down that no one is likely to reach her. As night falls, she decides to stay near the helicopter for safety, battling both the cold and her growing fear. By morning, when she checks on the pilot who had survived the previous night with grave injuries, she is shocked to find him lifeless, unable to hold on without medical help. His death leaves Abby even more unsettled, as now she is truly alone and unsure which direction to take. The following day, she resolves that staying here would only mean certain death, so she gathers her courage and decides to leave in search of help. She takes a bag from inside the helicopter, carefully packs the essentials she will need for survival, and sets off southward through the snow. As she treks forward, she suddenly hears the faint crackle of a walkie-talkie coming from the helicopter wreck behind her. Heart racing, she immediately turns back and rushes to the site, discovering that the signal is coming from the walkie-talkie once held by the injured pilot. Picking it up, she hears the voice of a man identifying himself as John, speaking from the other side. His tone suggests he too is stranded and in trouble. John asks her name and current location, and Abby quickly explains that her helicopter has crashed, begging him to send help as soon as possible. What John says next shocks her. He reveals that his helicopter has also crashed, and everyone on board perished except for him. He too is the sole survivor. Abby immediately senses that the crash of two helicopters in the same region cannot simply be coincidence. Something bigger and more sinister must be at play. Determined, she asks John to tell her his exact location, noting that the satellite frequency on the walkie-talkie cannot reach very far, which means he must be close. John replies that he isn't sure of his precise position, but remembers seeing a lake just before his helicopter went down. Abby tells him she will try to find him, but John warns her against it, insisting it is far too dangerous. Abby, however, refuses to back down, explaining that she has already taken countless risks and that meeting up might increase their chances of being rescued together. As she checks the map she carries, she notices a lake marked in the direction she's traveling and resolves to head straight toward it. With her bag strapped to her back, she pushes forward, facing harsh terrain and bitter cold. Camping is needed along the way. The journey is grueling, but she never loses her resolve. All the while, John continues to speak to her through the walkie-talkie, his voice offering both guidance and a fragile thread of hope as Abby struggles to reach him. As Abby continues her journey, John begins asking her questions through the walkie-talkie, wanting to know what she does for a living and what brought her to such a remote and dangerous place. Abby explains that she's a geologist working on a uranium mining project in these mountains, and that the reason she took this risky job is because her younger sister, Beth, is suffering from cancer and needs expensive treatment, so earning money quickly was her only option. Hearing this, John feels deep sympathy and sorrow for her situation. Meanwhile, Abby keeps pushing ahead, climbing over multiple mountains until nightfall brings her into a dense forest. Too exhausted to continue, she decides to spend the night there. Using branches and leaves scattered around, she constructs a small makeshift shelter and lights a fire nearby for warmth, eventually lying down to rest inside. But around midnight, heavy rain pours down, disturbing her rest. As she sits there, she takes out the strange black stone she has been carrying, and to her shock, it begins reacting the moment she touches it, almost as though it is alive. Stunned and confused, Abby struggles to understand what kind of stone it could be. When dawn arrives, she resumes her journey, soon finding herself walking across a frozen lake in the middle of a raging snowstorm. The path is brutal. She slips and falls repeatedly, her body weakened by the cold and exhaustion. Yet she refuses to give up, determined to reach John no matter the cost. Eventually, she comes across a towering, nearly vertical mountain that blocks her path. Attempting to climb, she manages only a short distance before slipping back down. Frustrated, she glances at the black stone lying near her, then grips it firmly in her hands, molding it into a different form with her touch. To her astonishment, the stone changes shape according to her movements, confirming that it holds some mysterious, unnatural power. Using it to wedge into a crack in the mountain, she creates a foothold and manages to climb upward step by step until finally she reaches the summit. From there, she spots a lake stretching out below her, recognizing it instantly as the same one marked on her map. Excited, she believes John could be nearby. To signal her location, she carves an arrow on the mountain rock and creates smoke for visibility, before pressing forward once again. While moving, she continues talking with John over the walkie-talkie, but his next words alarm her. He warns that the area she has entered is Russian territory, pointing out that the large vessel she sees in the distance is a Russian ship. If their soldiers notice her, they will shoot without hesitation. Terrified, Abby realizes the danger she has walked into and quickly tries to get out of the region. After hurrying through the area for some time, she stumbles upon a cluster of houses. Rushing toward them in hope, she soon discovers they are completely abandoned, each one eerily empty with no trace of life. She chooses one of the deserted houses, slips inside, and sits down to catch her breath. Just when she begins to rest, however, her eyes catch sight of a Russian man standing outside. The Russian man approaching had a gun in his hand, and the sight of him terrified Abby, forcing her to hide in a corner of the house. When he stepped inside and came closer, Abby, fearing for her life, fired at him in self-defense. The shot wounded him, but instead of retaliating, the man pleaded with her, saying that he had not come to harm her at all. He explained that he was lost in this region and had no intention of hurting her, begging her not to shoot again. He revealed that he had been in contact with someone named Ivan through his walkie-talkie and had reached this spot following Ivan's instructions. Curious, Abby took the device from him and spoke into it, but the moment she heard Ivan's voice, she realized it was actually John pretending under another name. John then told her that if she wanted to save her sister Beth, she must come quickly to the prison, making it clear that he had been manipulating both of them all along. Furious, Abby immediately threw the walkie-talkie aside. The injured Russian man, still reeling from her shot, admitted that he too was trapped in this hostile environment and regretted ever coming this far. Realizing they were both pawns in John's twisted game, Abby told him that instead of staying there helpless, they needed to move forward together and try to cover some distance. She added that the so-called Russian ship John had described earlier never existed at all. He had lied to lure her further into danger. Accepting the truth, Abby helped the man to his feet, since his injury made it difficult for him to walk. Supporting him, she guided him onward until they eventually arrived at a frozen river. With sticks in hand for balance, the two began carefully crossing, aware that a single misstep could send them plunging into the icy water beneath the fragile surface. Their every step was filled with dread, knowing the thin ice could shatter at any moment, trapping and killing them both. As they moved across, they reached a stretch where the ice was particularly soft, and disaster struck. The Russian man broke through the surface and fell into the freezing river. Abby rushed forward in a desperate attempt to save him, but in the process she slipped and collapsed into the snow herself. Despite her efforts, she could not rescue him, and the man was lost beneath the ice. Determined to survive, Abby clawed her way out of the pit, managed to pull herself free, and fled quickly from the scene. Shivering violently, she struggled against the cold, doing everything possible to stay warm as the icy wind tore at her body. Then, as snow began to fall heavily from the sky, Abby forced herself onward and hurried toward the shelter of a nearby forest. But this cave was actually built a little farther away, and Abby had no idea that such a place even existed. As she continued walking ahead, she suddenly slipped and tumbled straight into the cave, landing in a pool of hot water inside it. While lying in this steaming water, she suddenly noticed the lifeless body of someone floating nearby, and to her shock, it was none other than John, the same man who had been speaking to her through the walkie-talkie earlier. John, who had once been the commander of the American Air Force, had likely been passing through Russian territory when, at some point, his helicopter must have crashed, leaving his dead body submerged in this hidden place. After a while, Abby slowly regained consciousness, only to find herself surrounded by darkness. Looking around in confusion, she struggled to understand where exactly she was, when suddenly she heard a voice echoing through the cave. The voice belonged to a shadowy figure, and when she looked carefully, she realized that this black-bodied figure was none other than John himself, but transformed into countless small black particles. John began speaking to her, telling Abby that he had the power to make her capable of doing anything she desired. Staring at him in disbelief, Abby asked what exactly he was. John replied that he was nothing but a fragment of the mysterious black stone she carried, and that stone had granted him enough power to turn her into something beyond human. He told her that he could make her fly like the birds she had often seen in the skies along her journey. Many others like her, John explained, had once come to him, and they had now been transformed into birds soaring freely. He promised that the same fate awaited her too, but only if she was willing to sacrifice herself there. Hearing this, Abby began to realize that everything strange that had been happening to her since the beginning was connected to that strange black stone she had kept with her. Ever since she possessed it, her life had been filled with these bizarre and terrifying events. Mustering her courage, Abby told John firmly that she did not want to become like him or surrender her existence for his cause. All she wanted was to return home. Abby refused to be tempted by his promises or his illusions of power. But then her surroundings began to shift, and she started experiencing powerful hallucinations. She suddenly saw her house appear before her eyes, while heavy stones rained down all around it. In that surreal vision, Abby also saw her sister Beth standing there. What shocked her most was that Beth appeared completely healthy, even though she had been suffering from terminal cancer. Abby could not believe what she was seeing, questioning how her sister could be cured so suddenly. Beth then spoke, claiming that she had never actually had cancer in the first place. Even as Beth insisted it was the truth, Abby struggled to accept it, overwhelmed by the impossibility of the situation. Filled with emotion, Abby hugged her sister tightly, telling her how much she had missed her, how she thought she had already lost her forever, and how she had cared for her tirelessly ever since their mother's death. Yet even in that moment of reunion, Abby felt something was off, as if none of this was real, and to her greater shock, she suddenly realized that her mother also appeared to be present in that very place. The walkie-talkie is discovered there as well, and surprisingly, it is still functional. After this, the moment Abby pushes open the gate of that house, she realizes that she has returned to the very same spot where she had fallen earlier. Now, she no longer places any faith in the strange illusions of the black stone and quickly escapes from that place, igniting a flare for rescue. Soon after, a helicopter arrives to pick her up, and Abby is lifted to safety. When she regains consciousness, she finds herself inside a house, looking around in confusion, wondering if she is truly in a real home or once again trapped inside another endless loop. At that very moment, Sergei approaches her and explains that when he learned she still had not reached home, he immediately began searching for her, gathered the helicopter crew, and set out to locate her. Sergei then takes Abby safely to the airport, where she boards a flight and finally returns to her own home. Upon entering the house and looking inside, she sees her sister Beth still lying there. Beth then tells Abby that she had heard news about the helicopter crash and thought that both sisters would not survive, but now she feels relieved and overjoyed to see Abby alive. Beth adds that with Abby by her side, she can now leave the world peacefully without any regret. Their father is also sitting there beside Abby and Beth, silently sharing the moment. After some time, Beth takes her final breath, and both Abby and her father are devastated by the loss, and with this, the movie ends. Thank you for watching.